The immediate question is, of course, are we looking at a much better year ahead? So basically, will India see a post-pandemic rebound in our economy? In fact, most analysts expect a big comeback in what they call a V-shaped rebound for our economy and the global economy as well. While the Indian economy fell much more sharply than most other countries, the rebound in our economy is also expected to be much better than in other countries. India is expected to grow by over 11% according to both the IMF and the Economic Survey, which is almost twice as high as the average growth rate of around 6% for all other developing economies on average. That's a huge and welcome relief for our country at a time when so many people are unemployed and factories are running well below capacity because of the pandemic. So the forecast that India will have a V-shaped rebound means that despite falling 7.7% in the pandemic year, the economy will bounce back to reach just over the pre-pandemic levels. The economic comeback for India is really significant, and the GDP next year will be about 2.5% above 2019, that's pre-pandemic. That implies we will begin to catch up with the other developing countries, so it will be only slightly short of their growth over the 2 years, placing them at almost 3.75% above 2019 levels. So we're just below that. Raghuram Rajan, if I can just start with you. Thank you very much for joining us. I know how busy you are. I think you seem to be busier even during the lockdown. This COVID period seems to make you even busier. So did you think you'd have 8 months or 10 months to just relax, lockdown, I can sit back?
Well, people find you at home, right? It's easier to find you when you're locked down. Yes, so it's been busy. Unfortunately, every day looks like the previous one, so that's the downside.
But are you keeping fit?
Sure, yes. I guess that's one thing you have to try and focus on, eat better and maybe do some exercise. But so far, so good. But I would really love to be free.
Well, I must honestly say you are looking really fit. So you're obviously doing something right. Maybe you should be in lockdown forever.
Oh, God forbid.
Okay, coming to the Indian economy. Where are we heading? And what next? Now, the extent of the rebound that's being forecast for the Indian economy is really impressive, and it's really needed. How do you see our economy in the medium term with this positive post-pandemic bounce back? Will it be really strong? What do you feel?
So, the good news is that if the virus keeps going down, India will have a very strong year this year. A year of rebound. Yes, we won't go back to where we were if the virus hadn't happened, but we'll certainly make up some of the lost ground from last year's terrible performance. The question is, what happens after that? What happens in 2022, 23, 24? And there most people expect we go back to a very slow rate of growth, the 4 or 5% we had before the pandemic. And that is untenable for India, given the many sort of needs we have for jobs, for growth, and so on, and including geopolitical. I mean, we have problems at our border. We'd better get economically bigger if we are to deal with some of the problems that emerge on our border, including our ability to spend much more on defense.
Can I bring you in, Professor Kaushik Basu? Thank you very much for sparing the time to join us. I know how tied up you are. I know everybody uses lockdown as an excuse, but you are actually genuinely busy for once in your life. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Before we start, I do have one favor to ask you. Could you just lean slightly to your right? I do want to see that picture behind you of Rabindranath Tagore. Now you're talking. Thank you very much indeed, and more strength to your elbow.
That is what is needed at this stage.
So Kaushik, would you agree that it's absolutely imperative that we must have this big upturn in the economy? Any slippage and we are in deep trouble. Not even the slightest. We really need 11% plus.
And I am personally worried. So this is just the plunge of the year 2020, and people are talking about a V-shaped recovery, which I think it will be V-shaped, but only because once you've plunged so far deep, there is no other shape of recovery possible. So it has to be V-shaped that you're coming out. So we will come out with a V-shape, but still, from the IMF's forecast, it's not a huge coming out. It's a small coming out.
Abhijit Banerjee, it's great to see you again, and we're all looking forward to hearing your views about India and what comes next, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want to say. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me, and very good to see you again.
Thank you for sparing the time, and remember, we do have to have that promised Nimbu Pani soon, right? With Scottish Nimbus, of course. You know those Scottish Nimbus? Really special.
Yes, indeed.
Abhijit, it's really encouraging to see the forecast of this big recovery of our economy, this V-shaped bounce back with a higher growth than most other countries. Do you agree with these forecasts?
The IMF does this all the time. As they were predicting, I think in the middle of the year, they were predicting the 2% growth in 2020, and that of course turned out to be -8. They don't. I mean, we wrote about this in our book. There is an IMF study of how bad their predictions are. So I wouldn't hold my breath on 11%. Okay, could be 11, could be 7, could be something. I'm not. But I think that the reason why that's important is that the government should not put too much faith in its own budget numbers. It should be prepared to take it in the chin. That it's going to be, the growth doesn't happen. I wouldn't tighten the reins, stop spending. The real worry is that in India, this is why the budget, I sort of don't love talking about the budget. The budget is an aspiration. And then things go wrong. You can always choke off spending. You just don't send the money. The money doesn't show up. You don't get the expenditure.
And looking ahead, what should the government do now? How should it respond, for example, if our growth rate during the year is little lower than the projected 11%, you're noticing not quite achieving that? What policy options should the government have on standby?
We sort of know that we have on-demand programs like NREGA, but in fact, when the money is not there, the on-demand part of it falls through. And this year was a classic example of that. The demand was much bigger than people wanted, but it fell through. So it is a way of, we know that and I think what the government needs to do is be mindful of the fact that the growth may not happen, but if you start tightening in the middle of the non-growth, and if the non-growth is a result of a demand shortage at the low end of the income distribution, then that's going to be counterproductive. So I really want the government to be, willing to say, okay, fine, the IMF said that, we said that, but if it's not there, it's not there. We're going to keep spending money. And I realize that means acquiring more debt, et cetera, and the government is reluctant to do that, but it has been, I think, one of the other ways in which the economic survey is very clear is that it's sort of now much more willing to say we can handle taking more debt. That this is something we've been saying for a long time, that the people who have been keen to get the government to increase demand have been saying for a long time that I think the fiscal propriety is a bit overblown, and that maybe we should relax a little bit. But I'm glad the government has gone in that direction. It has relaxed. It has says explicitly that it's not going to worry about it as much. So I think that's right. But I think they should stick to that view that it's fine if they, rather than in the middle of the year when the growth is not happening, if you start cutting back because you think that the budgetary pressures you're going to get the kind of the consequences of the balanced budget multiplier playing the other way.
And Kaushik, you've written that we need to focus not only on the crisis caused by the pandemic, but on the entire period, maybe 10 years before the pandemic.
Right. My real worry is things began to happen before last year. And if you look at India's growth data, today the trouble is India, as soon as you point to data, people get so ideological that you're on this side or you're on that side. And I should tell you, frankly, in fact, as a preamble, I should tell you that I've got political differences with some of the things that the government is trying. But I throughout expected that the economy will do well. And so it comes to me as a big surprise, and there have been a couple of good policies. Like, for instance, the GST, despite the very poor implementation, was a good policy. The insolvency and bankruptcy code that was Arun Jaitley's doing primarily was good policy. So there were good policies. But here is the growth figure that I will point to, which just sums up my concern. 2016, 16-17, the financial year, India's growth rate was 8.2%. Very good growth. We feel good about that. The following year, the growth dropped to 7.2%. The following year to 6.1%. The next year to 4.2%. And the current year is speculation, of course, but -8 to -10% is what most people are saying. 4 downward step, that is over a 5-year period, stepping down each year worse than the previous, has never happened in independent India. That, to me, is the crux of the problem, and something which should receive a lot of attention.
Raghuram Rajan, this is an area which you really know inside out, because there's some real concern about the rising levels of bad debts that Indian banks are currently carrying in their books. Some call it a potential bubble. That's a word you made famous many years ago. Now that bubble is probably an exaggeration, but bad debts or NPAs, non-performing assets, is a major issue. How does India fix that problem?
First thing is clean up balance sheets. Balance sheets even before the pandemic were clogged with high levels of debt, and certainly bank balance sheets were clogged with bad debt. I believe that we have postponed this problem a little bit right now with all the moratoria, the forbearance, etc. But postponing the problem doesn't mean it goes away. And my sense is at some point we'll have to tackle it head on. And that's really the question. Do we have the discipline to tackle it head on and clean up the balance sheets to restore the possibility of longer run growth? And, we've, in a sense, suspended the IBC, the bankruptcy code. We've given a lot of forbearance. That has to change. We have to flip it over. And we have to find ways, for example, for small and medium enterprises to restructure their bad debts, to go to the bank and say, here's a deal, and allow the banks to accept deals. There's losses on all sides, but that way the small and medium enterprise can go forward. That is what we need to do in order to clean balance sheets.
Now for that to succeed, once again, everything is so dependent on proper implementation. The budget proposal of a special bank to handle the problem of bad debts needs to be sure that the process is carried out without favors or any political interference or influence, right?
Now we've proposed a bad bank. Again, the details are deliciously vague. We don't know. A bad bank which is largely in the public sector will be ineffective, but a bad bank which is only in the private sector may have some issues also. So design is really important here, and I hope the mandarins in the finance ministry are at work trying to figure out the design which will make it actually deal with the problem we have. So we need to clean up in the financial sector. It can happen, requires enormous effort and energy that should have started yesterday, certainly should start now.
I must say, I just want to take a moment to enjoy myself and embarrass you by saying this is all your fault. The year before you left, GDP grew at 8%, and then you left and GDP went down to 4%. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
No. I wish there was cause and effect was so clear, but it's not.
Chalo, for now we'll shall replace cause and effect with clear, solid correlation. But it is true that there have been a lot of major policy changes after you left.
Well, I think I hate to keep coming back to this, but it was a demonetization which sort of disrupted what was a process of strengthening growth. And of course, we have revisionist histories of demonetization. but the reality was India was coming back at that point after the global recession, and that disrupted the flow. And unfortunately, other things have built up on that disruption, and we haven't fully ever come back.
Abhijit Banerjee, you've often pointed out that Indian governments have to think big, think bigger, and that we don't think and act on a large enough scale. Scale matters, you say, and we need to recognize that, especially as a large nation, we need to have projects of large scale.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Also, when China went for world-class education, if it really, we talk about it a lot, but then we put small amounts of money with lots of strings. You know, China once, a friend of mine was the dean of Tsinghua, and he was basically told that your job is to, you know, go hire people. There are lots of bright people of Chinese origin or Chinese citizens who are working, you know, offer them salaries that are competitive and bring them home. And Tsinghua has, in some technical fields, is now number 2 in the world and things like that. It's just like they're stunningly improved stunningly. If you want to do that, if we want to be world class, we really need to have an agenda of, okay, we're not going to think of the pennies today and the, you know, does this fit into the particular regulatory framework and who's going to control it, how many people will approve. We really need to do what Tsinghua and the Chinese government did, which is tell you know, the deans that they have essentially a blank check to hire good people, and then you can do it. There's so many Indians of great talent, and I'm sure we could get a bunch of great people to come and work in the, you know, the All India Institutes or wherever we want to have quality. It's just, but it's really a matter of then revamping the entire system, you know, separating them out, giving them certain amount of autonomy, a lot more autonomy than they have, and tell them that if you want, you can pay whatever global salaries or then I think it's not that hard to do it, as China has shown us. But I think that we are pusillanimous often.